Good evening, everyone. I think we can start. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. My name is Tsepo, and I am part of the Covi-ID team. I am the Community Engagement Manager. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. With me, I have my team who will be supporting me this evening. Some of them will be talking tonight. Just like to say thank you and a shout out to them. Some of them are part of our growing community of volunteers. Thank you and a shout out to them before we sort of start. Our agenda for the evening, it's quite interesting. So first of all, we have a product update from our product team, followed by a very brief chat with Copia, who will be sharing some of the Covi-ID benefits. And then our finance team did a economic impact study recently, and they'll be sharing some of the sort of findings from that. So super interesting and excited for that. And lastly, we have a guest speaker, a surprise guest speaker, who will be sharing from a business perspective the kind of impact that COVID-19 has had on businesses in South Africa. So definitely an exciting agenda ahead of us. And and then lastly, we'll just have some time and opportunity for everyone to ask questions. Just a couple of housekeeping. At the bottom of the screen, we have a Q&A function. So if you have any questions at any point during this webinar, please feel free to use that function. Just sort of click on that, post any questions that you might have on that on there as well. Please also note that the webinar will be or is recorded. So there will be a recording of the webinar after this evening's sort of session. Before I sort of continue to talk nonstop, we'll just move to the next point of our program, or the first point of our program, which is a product update. I'll show you guys a quick video. Please let me know.
Michael here from Covi-ID.
If you can hear the sound. Wow, you could just sort of put a note on the chat.
Yeah, I could. Oh, good.
Cool. Sounds good, right? Awesome. Cool. I'll start to just play the video.
Michael here from Covi-ID. I'll be taking you through a quick demo of our platform, starting with creating a user profile or Covi-ID. This process can be done by an individual themselves or by a trusted custodian, like an organization on the behalf of someone else. On the screen, you will fill in information like name, surname, mobile number, choosing the document type, whether it be a South African ID number or passport number, then filling in that identification number of the document, then lastly, uploading a beautiful photo of yourself. From there, you should be sent a verification code to verify that it's actually you. And there you go, Covi-ID created. Let's look at registering an organization or verifier. Here is where you will put in the organization's name. We will use our amazing design studio, the Delta Studio. We click OK, and here we will be adding details of a representative from the organization. We'll use Michelle Williams. You might have heard of her recently. Now let's look at the number of verifiers. Verifiers will be people who are elected by the organization to scan other people's QR codes on behalf of the organization. Now, which category does Delta want to be involved in today? Normally, they are involved in software and tech, but today they have chosen retail and consumerism. Now we need to put in an email address for where we will send a QR code that verifiers will scan in order to confirm that they can scan other QR codes on behalf of the organization. Click submit, and there you go. It's sent. Now, Here is an example of how the QR code will probably look. Verifiers will scan that QR code. All they have to do is download the Covi-ID app, which should be available on iOS and Android. Here we're going to scan an organization QR code that gives you access to scan on behalf of the organization as a verifier. It will take you to a dashboard that will show you a counter. This counter enables organizations to keep track of the amount of people that are coming into a specific space, environment. Now let's use an example. Here is a Covi-ID that we have scanned. It's Sally Williams again. It shows that she is green, meaning there are no red flags. She is coming into our premises. So we will click in here. And once we've clicked in, it will start loading the dashboard again. So now you will see that the dashboard has increased its counter to 3, meaning that there are 3 people in the premises, and that we have conducted 37 scans in total that day. Now when Ms. Williams is coming out, we scan her for the ID again. There she is, she pops up. But now we click out. There we go. And it reduces the amount of people that you can see within the organization. There you go. Until next time.
Cool. Yeah, so that's a quick video from our product team. Up next, we have Simone from the Delta Studio, who is gonna talk a bit more in detail about what we sort of just showed you guys, and also some updates from a product side. Simone, you can just unmute yourself and just let me know when to move on to the next slide.
Great. Hi, everybody. So I've just got the one slide, just a very brief description of what we have been working on for the last 2 weeks. So thanks, Sepo, for showing that video. I think everyone can agree that Michael's got a really good presenter voice. So if you're ever looking for another job, you can be a radio presenter with that voice. So just to, that video showed the check-in and check-out functionality that we included in the previous sprint of the product. So this is essentially used for organizations to keep track of the number of people that are on their premises at any given time. So a lot of regulations around this at the moment. So it's a great function for organizations of any size, really. So it can be shopping centers, airports, markets, office buildings, things like that. And this also starts the process for the contact tracing, which is the second feature that we introduced in our latest release. So how this works is when a verifier checks you into a specific building, a geolocation tag or token and a timestamp is added to your Covi-ID wallet. And that's stating that you entered that location at that time. And I'm sorry, I saw the comments. And then when you check out again, the token and the timestamp is added again. And basically what this does is it creates a map of where you have been. And this information can be sent to our partner SafePath and allows contact tracers to be able to get hold of you if you have been exposed to someone that is a confirmed COVID-19 case during the time that you were there. And then sorry, I'm hearing some background noise there, so I'm not sure if there's questions or anything. The third thing that we did in the last sprint was just rebuilt the architecture. So Alex, in a webinar about 2 weeks ago, Alex explained that we were looking to move away from using street cred as the custodial wallet holder. So the data is now stored in a Covi-ID server and database, and we've implemented quite a few privacy preserving techniques to protect the user's data in our databases. So we did a big release last night of this functionality. we're still busy waiting on the Play Store to release the Android version. So if anyone does want to play around with the functionality, I'm going to add a link to an APK that you can download, and this is only really for Android phones. And what you can do is you can go through the whole flow. You can go to the website, create an organization, create your Covi-ID as an individual, and then see how the whole process works together. It's quite interesting to see how that all fits in. So just a point on the iStore, we are still waiting for Apple to do this initial release for us, and we are hoping to have this in the next couple of days. So all those Apple users out there are just going to have to hold on for that a little bit longer. And then another exciting thing that we've been working on this week is we're doing a redesign of our website. So this is going to be live tomorrow evening. So you can all go and check that out then. Great, that's that from my side, Seppo. You can carry on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Simone. Yeah, just want to remind everyone and encourage you guys to use the Q&A function on here. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use that function. Up next, we have Co, who will be chatting to us about sort of the benefits of Covi-ID for organizations. Co, you can unmute yourself.
Cool. Thank you. Can you allow me to share my screen? So can you stop screen sharing and then I'll share my screen? I mean, otherwise it doesn't matter. You can also leave it and I just talk through it. That's fine. Okay, now I can. Just one, share. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Very good. So thank you, everybody. It has been an amazing past couple of weeks. We have really come a very long way from having an idea to having something that is actually launched on the Google Play Store that we've sent to Apple, where we're going back and forth with them so that it actually gets approved. I heard we're not the only ones who are battling with Apple these days to get their apps out on the iOS store, but we'll get through. And then the app will be on both stores. We have now entered the next phase, and the next phase is really exciting because we move from having an idea and sort of just having the vision towards having a product and working with real people on real implementations. I'll just very briefly share some of the updates that could be interesting for the broader community before going into the benefits. And that is, we have had really good discussions with several different governments in Africa about sort of national implementations. It's the first time that we really had this very tangible sort of feedback process that sees us sort of working closely with them and with our friends at Safe Paths, Safe Places, to build a solution that can really help. That is sort of the biggest news that we have actually sort of crossed this threshold from idea to execution. The second big news of the week that really sort of that really made me excited is that in Singapore, which was sort of the hotspot for BLE and Bluetooth-based contact tracing, they have now adopted a solution that has a couple of things in common with Covi-ID. It's called Safe Entry. And it's basically a check-in, check-out system because they have realized that pure Bluetooth-based contact tracing simply cannot be efficient. And so I've had several discussions with government people, with people from multilateral organizations around why that is. And the answer is, if you have 45% cell phone adoption in a country like South Africa, and you get 20% of those users to actually download the app, as in Singapore, or 30% even, you will never ever reach the threshold where epidemiologists tell us we need to be in terms of the number of contacts that are traced and contacted within a very short period of time that you need so that the contact tracing can be efficient. So what we've been saying from the beginning, in which the guys in Singapore seem to realize now, is that you need to have different funnels. You need to have different sort of mechanisms to feed data into a contact tracing system. So Covi-ID is exactly in that spot right now where we where we have a system that feeds into this, and where we believe there are several benefits. So let me start from the first one, the obvious one. That is having a QR code as a key to your personal data wallet, where you can have sort of all your personal information safely and securely stored without fear that we or anybody else sees your data, can do with your data whatever we want, so that you are always in full control of your data. You can use this for a lot of things. This digital identity that Covi-ID provides is the first step towards sort of larger participation in the digital economy, in the digital ecosystem that is being created at the moment. So that, I think, is having this access point, this ID towards your digital identity. I think that is very important, because it makes the bridging of online and offline so much easier. Our approach is extremely inclusive. And whenever we talk with people, that's always something that we hear, that they say, oh, you know, we've actually not thought about what happens with people who don't have smartphones, what happens with people who don't know how to use the app, which really are a lot, even in industrialized countries in the global north. So this radical focus on inclusion means that we can reach parts of the population that have always been excluded from digital participation. And I think that's one of the things that makes me very excited, that we are able to deliver something that directly and genuinely helps these communities. So for organizations, if you are a supermarket, if you are an office building, even if you are a restaurant, a taxi owner, our app provides you with a very easy way to comply with existing regulation that actually requires you to sort of keep track of your employees, so that when there is an outbreak, you can inform them quickly, and you can work with the national contact tracers to curb the spread when there is an outbreak on your premises. Now, we've seen at the moment a lot of activity in the private sector, with several banks, several private sector participants developing individual solutions that all are a little different, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. We think that this sort of fragmentation is quite dangerous, because if you have a very fragmented system, it will become ineffective. So by building a free, open source, interoperable, fully accessible platform, we allow organizations to easily build on top of what we do. So we are partnering now with private sector participants to help them build solutions for like concierge app kind of platforms that tap directly into our system and become interoperable. And we make it easy. And for SMEs, for example, you can just take our app. It is free, and you can just run it in your spaza shop, in your local grocery store, whatever you want, and go straight ahead and use it. No cost for you. What we've done in the background is we've changed a lot of our architecture, because SSI, self-sovereign identity, simply didn't give us the necessary scale that we need in order to reach millions and billions of people. And that's our goal. We want to have a solution that works for everybody on the world, but in particular for those in emerging markets. This is billions of people, so we need that scale. So we've had a look around, and we checked sort of what alternatives are out there. And we came across trusted execution environments, and we are building our sort of our next release that feeds directly into a trusted execution environment. The infrastructure, everything is there. We just need to deploy it, which we're going to do over the next couple of days. Like, knock on wood that the devs don't get a heart attack when they hear me say that. But we're going to deploy it on a trusted execution environment, because it's the best possible privacy model that we can think of, because everybody is in full control over their personal data. It doesn't even require sort of any third-party processing, like StreetCred was a third party that was involved in the SSI world. So it gives the users this little extra bit of functionality. Because of that, we have created the concept of geolocation receipt. So whenever you have your QR code scanned by a verifier, like a taxi operator or a security guard, they issue you a QR code, they issue you a geolocation receipt directly into your personal data wallet. That makes it possible for us to feed the data that is generated, this breadcrumb trail, I call it sometimes, that feeds this data into the fantastic platform that the MIT Safe Paths, Safe Places team has developed, so that then sort of the process of feeding that information into directly actionable items for the manual contact tracers, for public health officials, that is automated and it's privacy preserving, so that sort of whoever sort of builds on top of our platform, on top of our infrastructure, can be sure that it's compliant with regulation, that it's easy to adapt because it's open source, and still gives you this essential functionality that we need for COVID-19. So if you test positive for COVID, you are then asked if you want to volunteer your data back into the system. And that is really the way how sort of positive test results are being fed into the system. And we are complying with what the WHO has advised as best practice for sort of privacy preservation. It is not a mandatory system, although some jurisdiction that we have been talking to, they want this to be mandatory. But I think it's a better way if you still have a choice, if you want to volunteer your data to feed back into the system and sort of help protect yourself and others. Now, lastly, we have taken a little step back from the immunity certificate functionality. A lot of that is there in our platform, but we've just taken this sort of little step back simply because the WHO does not yet advise to use immunity certificates. Immunity is not yet verified. I think in a few weeks or in a couple of months at the latest, we will have sort of clear guidelines on immunity. It would be the first respiratory disease that doesn't have any sort of immunity. I think the risk is that the virus will mutate, but unlike in the movies where sort of it's airborne, now the mutation is worse than the original strain. Usually mutations are much less dangerous. So I think while we might not be able to completely eradicate the virus, we will end up in a world where the really dangerous strains are sort of contained and you develop an immunity against them, especially as we enter a vaccine. So we have that functionality in the background. It's not currently deployed, also because there are ethical questions around stigma that we are very cognizant about to make sure that sort of whatever we build is culturally appropriate and doesn't expose anybody to risk. So I've spoken way too long, but as you can see, I'm very excited about this latest release because it's the first time that we have passed this threshold of sort of saying, oh, this would be nice and this would be nice, to actually, like, we are being able to try it on our phones. We are working with fantastic partners like BDO to sort of explore the functionality, see how we can take this forward, see how we can sort of really deploy it out in the wild. And that's just a massive and fantastic achievement of this group. So let me take a few questions. I hope that's okay, Tsipho. I've been talking too long, but maybe I can take a few questions from the Q&A. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. So the first one from anonymous attendee: how does the application enforce the counter function in Office where we have more than one verifier? So, okay, so that is basically, you can have a nested functionality. You can have like the big office building where you enter and you get checked into this very large space. Within that large space, you can move into a smaller space like your office, your floor, or the cafeteria, which is a dangerous place from a public health perspective. Whenever you check in and out of that space, you so if you get this geolocation receipt, and all the system needs is that sort of this geolocation receipt sort of is there. Now, for large spaces, large open spaces are much less of a risk than closed small spaces, like a taxi, for example. Taxi is very high risk. So we haven't built the functionality yet to differentiate between the two, but it's up to organizations how they want to design these different checkpoints. So a lot of that is actually process and not so much functionality of the app, how to set up these different checkpoints to make sure that you get the best public health results from it.
Can I jump in, Ko?
Yeah, sure.
So just to answer that question regarding like having multiple kind of check-in points. So how it works is when you generate your organization code, the verifiers, you can have multiple doors if you have a large building. And essentially every single person or security guard at each door will have their own app. and at the beginning of the day, or they actually only have to log in once, they log into the company kind of organization code for that building. And essentially they are all scanning in people, but they all see a net amount of people that are in the building at the same time. So it's kind of like they logged into that organization buildings account. You can generate separate organization codes if you are a larger business with many premises. All you would have to do is you can regenerate as many organization codes as you like for every building that you have, and then the verifiers can log into every building when they arrive on the day, whenever it may be, and you can continue to keep track throughout the day of how many people have entered and left the buildings themselves. Yeah, so I think that that's just kind of like further to that point. You can, we need to be considering at the moment, like whether, you know, the idea that one business can have multiple buildings, and looking at like kind of a management dashboard for that, of how you can manage all your buildings and all like the verifiers associated with those. But that could potentially be a longer term vision of the Covi-ID project, and more of the kind of like when we work as an implementation partner of this with businesses, is something we can discuss and assist with.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Can we leave some of the questions sort of towards the end, or is there something that you want to cover now before you sort of leave?
No, maybe only the next one with the handshake, just because I have to move to another call, but maybe I'll be quick. So the next one is about the handshake that occurs when you cross paths with someone who might have been contracted the virus. The Safe Paths app has an automatic exposure notification, like an automatic alert. What we are doing is we are communicating the information about who might have been exposed to manual contact traces, simply because we don't want your phone going off and then, you know, who let the dogs out rings and there's a big alert saying exposure. I think that's quite dangerous. So I think the better system is to feed this into existing national solutions for the manual contact tracers, so that they do take the appropriate steps to contact you. Because we use cryptography, there's no concern about man-in-the-middle attacks. So that's like the design of the system is secure, so that this cannot happen. Lastly, very briefly, so we are hoping that governments will adopt the solution, not so much as an sort of enforcement mechanism that you cannot enter a public place unless you show your Covi-ID, although in all practicality, especially in closed spaces, like a taxi, like a school, like a supermarket, I believe that this is a necessary step that we need to take to have everybody check in, check out, so that we can contain the virus outbreak. If there's a new outbreak somewhere, we can make sure that, you know, we can actually reopen the economy. But since this is a very sensitive topic, we need to make sure that it's done in a very privacy preserving way, that it is not creating a central database where people record everybody's movements, because this kind of mass surveillance system will lead to avoidance, will lead to a lot of negative adverse social effects, where people sort of develop just issues when you have to be compliant all the time towards the state. So you need to make sure that it's privacy preserving, that it's empowering, and not just restricting. But yeah, we hope that the government in South Africa, like in other countries, sort of will see the light and will say, yes, we want to build this platform where sort of individual businesses can build their own solutions on top of it, but we have this privacy preserving underlying layer that automatically creates a digital identity for everybody, to make sure that we can include as many people in the system as possible, because you really need to have a very inclusive system. Otherwise, we know that it's just not enough to have sort of contact tracing. You need to have it at scale, otherwise it cannot work. Mathematically, it cannot work. And that is why our channel of generating data complements other channels. Cool. So thank you, Seppo. Thank you, everybody. If there are other questions at the end, So we will create, as always, an FAQ. We will try to answer everything. Also, if you're on social media, if you leave a comment, we'll reply to you and we will get back to you to address sort of all the questions you have. This is a really new system. It's very different from other contact tracing solutions. It is, I think it's actually innovative. So there are a lot of questions. Please go ahead and ask them. It helps us a lot, the more questions we get, because then we know how we have to explain it so that everybody gets our vision and sort of understands the benefits. So every question you leave will help us to communicate more efficiently. All right, and with that, I'll leave you guys to the economic impact analysis, and I'll check back with you later. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much, Ko. Yeah, like Ko said, please use the Q&A functionality, and also we are on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and on Instagram. So if you are on any of those platforms, please do make sure to follow us there. It's Covi-ID or Covi_ID on most, or if not all of them. Cool. Up next, we have Michael, who leads our efforts in the sort of finance and B2B marketing stream. So the team has done an economic impact, a COVID-19 economic impact report, and they'll be sharing some of that feedback right now. Michael, you can go ahead and talk. Yeah.
Okay, I hope everybody can hear me. If I'm talking too loud or too softly, please blow up the chat and put me in line. Just joking around. But anyway, good evening, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to just say thank you for everybody, my personal network, for attending. It really means a lot. Special thanks to the Covi-ID team and our partners. The platform really wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for you guys. And lastly, just thank you for everyone that has attended today, this evening, and availing your time to be here. We're really excited about what we are building and what we continue to build, and we look forward to the journey ahead and hope that everybody that's involved will be a part of it some way. Anyway, let's get into the webinar. As Tsepo said, he kind of introduced me. My name is Michael Ntenga. I head up the finance department at Covi-ID. And usually organizations, finance departments are quite busy, but at Covi-ID, it's a bit different. Our platform is open source, partly because we do understand that businesses are going through a lot right now. And by making a platform like ours free and free to use, free to build on, it really makes it easier for us to achieve our goal of reducing the spread of COVID-19 in society and creating a safe environment for the economy to get back to work. So our department has really had to think about other ways that we can add value to the Covi-ID team. And one of the ways we've been doing that is by conducting research. As Tsepo said, we've been conducting research into the economic impact of the pandemic, the lockdowns on businesses, and the greater economy in South Africa. And the first bit of information I would like to point your eyes to is this one. You can go to the next slide, please. Two articles about the South African GDP growth forecasts. I wouldn't say growth, but shrink forecasts this year. But besides the fact that both of them paint a dismal picture, the more shocking thing is the fact that these reports were released within 1 week of each other. So it literally took Moody's 1 week to revise this figure by a full 4%. So it's very clear that we're in a difficult situation, and the reason is quite obvious, lockdowns and the pandemic. So let's start with why we need a lockdown, and I'm sure the reason cannot be more obvious. It's to curb the spread of COVID-19. But the more important question is how. How do we implement these lockdowns? And that is where our research has been focused. There are two ways of implementing a lockdown: a hard lockdown and a smart lockdown. And I'm sure because of the names, it's pretty clear which one is better. In fact, the South African economy saves an estimated 7.5 trillion rand by implementing the latter. But then why is the government not doing this? They actually are. In fact, some provinces have been able to reap the benefits of smart lockdowns. But unfortunately, provinces like mine here in Gauteng and Cape Town as well, where my colleagues are stationed, we are still under a hard lockdown, even though it is under level 4. And our hope is here at Covi-ID, our platform can assist in reducing the spread, which could ultimately result in our provinces as well, reaping the effects of a more relaxed lockdown. The figures you see on the screen were calculated from Stats SA, and in fact, Stats SA made an assumption that the economy would be saving a whopping 70% in foregone turnover costs under a smart lockdown. So instead of trying to enforce a hard lockdown, we really should be focusing on trying to implement a smart one. And the biggest ways that we can do this is harnessing the power of technology. And our team has done just that. Our team at Covi-ID, we're using technologies like blockchain to protect the privacy of users, and also using QR codes and digital dashboards to help verifiers like organizations manage the risk of COVID-19 infections in the environments of business and wherever they operate. But why should we be pursuing such a structure, a smart lockdown? And what does it mean for businesses? And let me start by mentioning something that I strongly believe in. You can go to the next slide now, sorry about that. One of the greatest qualities of the human race is resilience. So I'm pretty confident as well that we will recover from the crisis. And we have before with world wars and even pandemics of the past, like the Spanish flu. But a more pressing question is when and how. If you can't see the graphs on the screen correctly, but these graphs are just plotting change in GDP versus time. And they give 3 different scenarios for economic recovery. And the first scenario and the best case scenario is a V-shaped recovery, which is the type of recovery that we've seen in South Korea and Singapore. And part of their success stories is they've used technologies similar to Covi-ID for better contact tracing and risk management. As Co mentioned in the beginning of the video, there were new developments, and one of those platforms that's been implemented in Singapore is similar to Covi-ID, where they're using QR codes at areas of businesses or where there's a lot of people operating. The next scenario would be a U-shaped recovery, which is what we experienced in the last financial crisis in 2008, which is the one in the middle, or the last and the worst case scenario, the L-shaped recovery. And the longer we take to reopen society, the more likely we are heading towards an L-shaped or U-shaped recovery, where the effects of the pandemic will be present long after it's been eradicated. And that is why it is very important that we begin to act now. Which takes me on to business. And before I continue, I think it's pretty clear that business cannot continue as usual. Businesses and organizations will have to adapt to the current climate like the government has. They have no choice, and I believe the best time for organizations to act is now. Based on an article by McKinsey, it's a top global management firm in the world, McKinsey & Company, they see the effects of COVID-19 lasting for a medium-term period, meaning that we could be dealing with this crisis for the next 3 to 5 years before having a vaccine or alleviating the disease from society completely. And based on a survey by Stats SA, and which is the figures that you see on the screen now, 42.2% of businesses won't even, it was a survey they conducted, a few businesses, 707 businesses that do turnover of 2 million and above. And yeah, they said, 42.2% of them said they will not survive through the pandemic. 30.2% said that they won't survive for longer than a month. And 54% of businesses won't survive longer than 3 months. And these statistics are actually taken from a month ago. So yeah, it's not looking that good, but there is hope. A smart lockdown means a 60% increase in economic activity. And although that may sound good, it does not mean it will improve our economic situation. For organizations to fully realize this potential, they will need to show consumers and employees that they do care and take full responsibility for providing a safe environment for society as we reopen the economy. Substituting manual efforts to manage COVID-19 risks, like I've seen this in retail when I go out, people are keeping track of the amount of people in a specific space using weird things like nuts and bolts, carrying and, like that's a very contact based method, and it actually increases the risk of transmission. And, our platform literally does this automatically using the QR code system we've developed. And even goes as far as using this information to protect others without compromising the privacy of users, as I've said, by using blockchain. And we've even partnered with industry-leading contract tracing organization, MIT SafePass, to provide heat maps of infection hotspots to our users so that we can continually, further reduce the disease. You can go to the next slide. To conclude, okay, there we go. To conclude, the McKinsey report also highlights the important role the private sector will play in dealing with this crisis, especially from a contact tracing point of view. And I believe there is no better time than now to start thinking about, how your organization, if you work under an organization, if you're a part of one, can be a part of this effort to fight the spread of COVID-19 and create a safe environment for society to thrive again. And as I've mentioned throughout this presentation, and as my colleagues have mentioned, COVID-ID was created for this very reason, and we are ready to start working with and partnering with organizations to help them achieve this goal as well. We will be publishing an article about our findings on our Medium page, so keep an eye out for that. We will also release a formal report based on our findings. And we have also created a brief summary of the level 4 regulations for occupational safety in relation to COVID-19, which will also be available soon. We are hoping to also release a calculator to determine the risk of a breakout of COVID-19 in a workspace based on sector. This is also in the pipeline. And I would also and if you'd like to get the latest news on when these resources will be released, you are invited to join our Slack community. And for organizations, if you are interested in working with COVID-ID to mitigate your risks you are facing right now and definitely will be facing in the future as the lockdowns relax, please feel free to drop your email in the chat and we will definitely reach out to you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you to the team for putting this together. This is really interesting. Amazing work, guys. And I know we kind of out of time, but lastly, we invited someone who is from has kind of first-hand experience of what's been happening from a business perspective. So we have Tsepo Nkamele, who will be chatting to us on the impact of Covi-ID on South African small businesses, or just businesses in general. His current role focuses on transformation within the financial sector, with a specific focus on implementing preferential procurement and enterprise development. Yeah, I'll just hand over to Tsepo to just talk to us. You can just unmute yourself.
Cool. Thank you, Tsepo. I'm not sure if everyone can see me.
Put your video on.
It's on.
Yeah, I can see you.
Yes, we can see you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity, and yeah, thank you for the introduction there, Tsepo. Really appreciate just the chance to share some of my experiences and what we're seeing right now, and rightfully introduced. My role currently right now focuses a little bit on working with procurement teams and also with financing of SMEs. And before I get into the detail of some of the things that we are seeing already, I just want to give a thumbs up to the work that you guys are doing here on Covi-ID. I think it really gives me hope and gives me great satisfaction to see that, in times like these, entrepreneurs are spending their time thinking about really good solutions that add value. And I say this because, with the increase in infections and the move of the virus, what we are also seeing, sadly, from an SME financing point of view is quite a lot of optimism, blind optimism, foolishness, and a lot of fraud happening around with opportunities that are fake, financiers that are fake, people looking for financing which is not legitimate. So I think in these tough times, it's quite important to look at entrepreneurs for hope and look at what some of the work that you guys are doing, but also just make sure that we're trading cautiously and safely with that optimism that we're moving forward with. So I'd just like to take just a couple of minutes to, speak about what some of the realizations of things that we are seeing from an SME financing point of view specifically. Is one of the things that been rightly spoken about by Michael prior to this is that things like the continued anxiety of human contact and social distancing realities are thing that's going to be here for us that's going to be here to stay. You'll probably see a lot more as well, things like remote working being encouraged more aggressively. But unfortunately, things like going into work for call centers and sort of industries that have been left behind by the move for smart sort of working solutions are still going to be needed to work and still be needed physically to attend workplaces as well. So things like Covi-ID are really going to serve a big purpose in that. And also things that we can't probably get away from, like large gatherings at malls, shopping centers, as well are things we can't do away with right now, but are still going to be a necessity. And obviously things like concerts, festivals, large gatherings like that are probably going to be a thing that we'll probably see in a very long time from now, a couple of months most likely. So in a time obviously when people are losing jobs, etc., I think some of the things that we are seeing already is the gig economy starting to take up, also become a real reality and we're being pushed towards it, So this idea of companies carrying large overheads is probably going to start going away right now. And we are requiring institutions that are involved in the e-commerce space or people starting to work with e-commerce to take an upsurge and actually thrive in these times like this. Just we saw how Alibaba started to take up during the SARS outbreak in China as well. We're probably going to see a lot of e-commerce based companies start to take the fore and really take over in terms of the opportunities that present themselves during these times as well. And so what we have seen as we look at the performance of businesses in our books as lenders, we are seeing traditional industries like fuel stations, businesses that rely on oil, the retail, restaurants, and entertainment industry businesses starting to struggle. A lot of them are defaulting on payments. Credit scores are really spiraling out of control. And, it's quite an interesting time for us as lenders and financiers is that do we spend this time trying to save those businesses? Maybe some of them saving businesses that may already be a thing of the past. Or do we, start looking at how we encourage new, different types of businesses to take over? Some businesses are also not being directly impacted by the virus itself, but are suffering from secondary impacts. So these would include things like the retail industry, things like Edgar's, your consumer goods that are struggling because spending is shrinking. People have less and less money to spend. And also things like construction industry, where we definitely see that government spending is going to go down. So therefore investment in construction is going to be reduced significantly. And therefore a reprioritization of supply chains, especially in corporate environments. So things like your marketing expenses, your team building expenses, your building management expenses and the upkeep of certain facilities, we foresee those being reprioritized with this a push towards corporate supply chains, public sector and private sector supply chains as well, prioritizing how to create enabling environments for employees to work remotely and work safely if ever they need to come to the office. But also on the other hand, we are seeing a couple of businesses do really well, especially in the ICT sector as well. Cybersecurity, a lot of people using platforms like the Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and others as well. There's quite a big spend in making sure that those sort of interactions are safe and happen in appropriate ways. So we're seeing those businesses do really well. Some of the fintechs that actually financing purchase orders are starting to do well as well. because there's been, I think, a short-term increase in government spending around protective clothing and also just being able to respond to the virus itself. So those are doing well. And in my personal view, a solution as smart and as awesome as this one as well, most likely to do well, because it is then the priority of business, supply chains, corporate, and government as well, to make sure that we're able to trust the data we have on the virus. We're able to trust to basically the movement of people and where the local or transmissions are taking place as well. And more we'll probably see prioritization of corporate supply chain financing of opportunities like this one that we're seeing right now. So don't have too much more to add, but just to give this solution a really good thumbs up. I think, in my view, it's a business of the future and a much needed solution, and most likely we'll see a lot of support from both the financing and procurement and market access point of view.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tsepo, for that insight. I think sort of gonna move on to sort of the last sort of segment of the webinar. We will take or start to sort of try to answer some of the questions that are on the Q&A side. Louise, if you wanna sort of take over the Q&A.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess it is a Q&A, so I guess, I don't know, let's look through the questions. Does anyone want to pop any questions down at this point, or should we start moving backwards?
I think we can just answer some of the questions that haven't been answered on the Q&A thing.
Okay, sweet. So the first one. The question is from Obakeng. What's the target when it comes to organizations finds that businesses are being forced to move online to maximize even outside the office? And are we mainly targeted at retail businesses, and why? So I think that's a good question. I mean, retail businesses are definitely probably a point of high need with regards to understanding the risk that their retail outlets are under with regards to COVID. But I would not say that we are predominantly retail focused in any way. The truth of the matter is that, it's uncertain exactly what the economy will look like with regards to offices and the use of offices over the next 6 months. There are a lot of businesses that do need a premises to carry on operating, and there are a lot of industries that still need actual physical locations to carry on operating. So the problem that you really have is you have such a variety of different locations in which people will still need to go. So from our perspective, while there might be a move from some businesses to remote only, I think there is still going to be a very fair amount of the economy that will require physical locations. So our strategy really is, our strategy is dictated really from where we get requests from customers to service, is companies that want to allow people to use the offices in general, because I think, there are a lot of reasons for that. One being from they're forced to, with regards to like call centers that can't actually be migrated in time. And then some other businesses actually, people like really do struggle to work from home. So, there's quite a broad spectrum, I would say. So I don't know if there's any other questions with regards to kind of just the business side. I guess I could perhaps, there's in the normal. Any Covi-ID questions? Somebody can't see the speaker. So I guess maybe I can just give a slight overview. In absence of a question, there's one. So a question from Chris is, how close in proximity can we track an infected person's contact with other people? So this is a good question, and I think it really strikes back to taking a step back with regards to track and trace in general. Across the world, there are several different types of track and trace from a core functioning perspective. So, I mean, in Europe, you see a lot of countries moving towards kind of a Bluetooth privacy by design structure. There are some countries that went from a geolocation perspective. There are some that did it less privacy preserving, others that did it more privacy preserving. And then you start seeing even the countries that went to a Bluetooth perspective, which is one of the techniques that can give you really close proximity readings. It's like Singapore initially, which was one of the first countries that actually came out with any type of tool with Trace Together. I mean, if you look at the uptake, even in a country like Singapore, they had like 10 to 15% of people downloading the app, and it didn't really work. So although you could get within 1 or 2 meters worth of proximity, you didn't actually get the rollout. So then you start looking at different techniques of understanding if people were in contact, like your QR code-based location check-in, which Covi-ID does as a primary method. And there are a lot of benefits to that, but it also does limit I would say the accuracy or the resolution of a proximity that we can actually read. So one of the benefits is that, and we've mentioned it many times on here, is that it is a very low-fi solution that is very easy to onboard users onto, which is key for a country like South Africa and many other countries around the world, even noting that Singapore has now actually developed, after doing a Bluetooth tracing, which can give you like high resolution, it's actually now moved after that to a QR code based location check-in. So we can't give great proximity, but we can give a broad-based solution that can give you an idea if you are in the same location at the same time. So it is a trade-off, but in our opinion, this is definitely the better, more holistic way to go. Cool. How close to proximity? Okay. Next question, given several businesses that have already deployed solutions to identify staff, contractors, suppliers, and client bases on their self-declared COVID status, how would Covi-ID practically be interoperable with these ID systems? Good question. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there are a couple of key concepts that need to be taken into account here. If you actually have a look at Europe and you actually have a look at like the kind of, they're usually, I think they're about 2 months ahead, but the trials and tribulations they've gone through is that there are many private solutions that pop out of nowhere to service different fractions of the market. So there are solutions that pop up to do only one company, or solutions owned by a single entity or commercial entity that would exclude operation with a different side of the market, or are not government sanctioned. And I mean, those things do get out of the gates really quickly. But the problem is, as you mentioned, is interoperability, right? At the end of the day, unless you are looking at a countrywide holistic solution that really does have backing from government, one, and two, has integrations with all of the right testing centers and all of the right labs, you really kind of make a system that is fractional and doesn't actually assist with the overall assistance of track and trace. And what that does lead to eventually is just siloed versions of, what your status is and what that means for your office. And that's fine, but it's not going to help you, because at the end of the day, you knowing what your employee status is, at the end of the day, just tells you that, okay, everyone else that was in the office should now go home. But in that case, you should have been on lockdown in general and you shouldn't have been at the office. What a holistic track and trace solution does for the entire market, if we can find a way to make it interoperable, which is one of Covi-ID's core concepts, is that if somebody was at risk from a completely different location going into your office, at that point, your risk indication should already say, okay, cool, maybe this is not somebody that, or we should have an indication already that we should maybe lock down this location. So without the full picture, maybe let me put it this way, without the full picture, you're not really going to have the best benefit with regards to actually flattening the curve and also assisting any of your locations to get back into business. And that does differ obviously between different industries. I mean, retail is a very different thing to, you know, perhaps mining. Mining has a very different problem, and like we're engaging with kind of one large kind of mine. But at that point, like the goals are very different, and in that perspective, Covi-ID is a very flexible solution that can assist in many different ways. And we are working, you know, in ways to kind of integrate that. Miguel did mention that there's time, so I don't know if I should answer one or two more of these. Maybe let me just quickly, Caitlin says she's the owner of a mobile dog grooming company with a staff component of 15. She wants to know how and who she can contact.
You can contact info@covid.me or zepo@covid.me. And yeah, I'll just drop my mail in the chat as well.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I think we've run out of time, so I don't know if we want to.
Yeah. So what we will do is that any question that is unanswered here, we will put together a FAQ, which we'll send out tomorrow with sort of like a post-event mailer, include the recording of this webinar on that as well. So if there is a question that's not answered or you still have more questions, we will sort of share that in a post-event emailer. And also we are on social media and on LinkedIn, we're quite active there. So please feel free to sort of follow and also just like ask any questions on there as well. I'm gonna drop my mail here, and for people that have questions and interested in sort of chatting more with us, they can just reach out. Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Louis, and thank you, Tsepo, Michael, Simone, and Alex from the team, and everyone that just contributed to this evening, and everyone that attended as well. We appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, and I think that's it for the night. That's all we have for tonight. And see you guys at the next one. And thank you for joining. Cool.